Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Unreal Behavior Trees. So where we last left off was this get noise distance function. We basically wrote this guy, did a bunch of calculations to try and figure out whether or not, we're trying to add sound essentially to this. And so we're still just testing these tools. We're basically building this toolbox. I think the last video left off without actually showing where this is called. This is where it's called, here in the find target, which in turn is this guy. Anyway, so what I have here is I have a bunch of kind of spam happening of, the actor distance. You can kind of see it here. We can kind of watch. And so there'll still be, you look for the blue traces, the sort of cyan traces. As I get a little closer, you can kind of see there, sound distance is still 0. But as I'm moving kind of faster, you can see sound distance is changing here. So this is, the distance in which someone needs to be for them to be able to hear what I'm doing. And I have a max, which is 500. So if I'm hauling ass, you can see that it basically pegs at 500. If I hold down the shift key, which means I'm going to walk, it's actually still going pretty fast, so I should probably tune that. But if I'm just sort of tapping, there's a 51, so you're seeing different values. So if I just run up to this guy, you'll see there it is, detected. You see the detected a couple times. You look for the blue cyan, right? If I'm running up to him. But if I'm kind of here, I'll wait for those to go away. But if I just sort of slowly, inch. Oh, he detected me there. So there's some tuning certainly that has to happen to make this feel better. But the idea is here that I should be able to kind of sneak up on him. He obviously can still see me, so he's fully detected here. And of course I can still kill him. So that's it. I think that works just fine. So we have a couple of senses. We have a visual sense. So if he sees me, then I'm hosed, right? He'll detect me. And he has an audible sense. So if I'm getting too close, then and I'm moving too fast, then he'll catch me as well. That I think is good for now. I think that the next thing that we want to do is, right now it's kind of boring because he doesn't do anything. We just see logs. This is programming, by the way. I always try and get these little tools basically working kind of how I want. And then I move on to other stuff. So I always test this stuff. I'm not going to hook everything up. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to take us back to this behavior tree and start really hooking stuff up. Let's really think about, what does this behavior look like? Okay, so let's talk about what kind of a design that we want. Let's just talk about what we want this guy to do. We should just come up with this right now. So I think generally what I want is I want an enemy who exists in the world. And that enemy may, there may be these kind of patrol points, right? And so the enemy might go between these patrol points. And that's just basic behavior. Let's throw in a player. Here he is. If the enemy sees the player, what I want is I want the enemy to be what? And then turn and face the player. So now the enemy is looking at the player, looking in that direction. And this is a classic stealth kind of game thing, right? It's oh, I think I see something, and then the player can hide or whatever. And so the enemy will sit there and sort of watch. And if they don't see the player anymore, and the player's gone for some amount of time, they'll go back to patrolling. Otherwise, what'll happen is the enemy will be oh man, there's totally someone here. And they'll start shooting, the player. And if the player runs away and they lose a player, enemy is going to chase you down. So, if there's some kind of brick here, player runs over here, so the enemy no longer has any kind of line of sight, then the enemy will say, okay, well, the last time I saw the player was here. So I'm going to head over there because I'm pretty sure that the player is going to be somewhere around there. So they're going to go search for your ass. They're going to look for you in the last place that you were. That's the hope. Then they're going to shoot you if they see you again, and then the cycle repeats. If they can't find you, if they've completely lost you, they'll go back to whatever they were doing. But here's the caveat. It's a pet peeve of mine in shooter games and stealth shooter games where it's I've just exchanged fire with someone who is infiltrating my base. Well, I guess it was the wind. I'm going to go back to my patrol as if nothing happened. That always bothers me. So we're not going to do that. Enemies have two states of movement. They can sort of walk which is what they'll generally do, but they also have a run state. And so if they're agitated, just for simplicity, you can change the animation to whatever you want. I happen to have a run animation for this skeleton, so that's why I'm using it. We'll set his state to run, so he's always running. Second, this whole question mark, explanation, all this crap goes away. It's not going to do that anymore. As soon as he sees you, he'll immediately pursue you and start chasing you. So we bypass that whole step. So you can run away from enemies, but there's a cost. And I think that's what we want to do. So I think those are the main behaviors. In general, what we're talking about two basic states, two sort of super states, if that makes sense. The first major one is the attack state. And so we'll talk about what that looks like. The second major one, which I'll put over here, I'm going to say the normal state. Really, maybe another way to think about this is whether or not I have any kind of target. And this is no target. But really I'm actively pursuing and or attacking the player versus I am not doing that, so I'm doing my normal thing. Those are the two states. If I have a target, I think that having a target doesn't necessarily mean that I can see the player. Although it might. No, I think it doesn't necessarily mean that. So I think we have to have two branches from here. One that says whether or not you can actively see the target. If so, we want to shoot. We want to take that guy down. If this is basically else. Otherwise, we want to run our question mark, exclamation point behavior that I mentioned, over here. But we only want to do that, in the cases that I mentioned. So we'll have to kind of figure that out, right? And there's a few other kind of edge cases we have to think about here. In the no target scenario, this is actually the more complicated scenario. Because in this scenario, we have kind of a bunch of possibilities. Specifically, I think we have, I would say, 3 or 4. We have one for whether or not I'm actively hostile. Right? The player is here. There's one where I'm pursuing, so there's a pursue behavior. There's one where I'm just patrolling. And then there's one where there's basically it's the same as patrol, but there's no patrol. Right? I just don't have patrol points because I want to have stationary enemies as well. These are kind of the main ones. And so hostile really is simple enough. It's just hey, let's chase the player. This guy is all sorts of stuff. This is also chasing, essentially. Patrol is doing the patrol points. I don't think I need to write all this stuff. These are basically actions that are going to happen. Really, these are actions. And then, I didn't write one there, but there basically is no action. The action here is essentially idle. Because there's nothing to do. I think these are the two major paths that we have to take. And of course, this is already looking like a tree because we have our root. And then down here, we have our, we already have a selector that has our find target, right? And then these guys can just go down here. This is probably our behavior tree. And I could write this whole thing out, and maybe it's worth kind of diagramming this out, because I think having a real plan can really help. But this is basically our behavior tree. All we really have to do is kind of decide which of these are selectors and sequences and all this kind of stuff. Hint, these are probably going to be the sequences. These are probably going to be the selectors. Let's start really thinking about what that's going to look like. So back here in our behavior tree, it's super simple right now, right? The entire time we've been testing this find target. And find target, does all this stuff. I'm going to very briefly walk through this again. It's going to find all of the ignored targets. It does a sphere test, making sure that, we ignore those targets, basically. Here's the loop of everything that we hit with our sphere test. So all of the things that we've hit that are valid possible targets with our sphere test, so, multiple players, if that were a thing, or just the one player now. This is a fast, simple thing that we can do. Then we do this visibility test. If that succeeds, then great, we're done. If it fails, we try the noise test. Can they hear us? If that succeeds, great. And if that fails, we kind of go into Neverland here. So now what we need to do is we need to actually change something. Right now we're literally just printing. So we need to go out here. And if you remember our Blackboard, one of the things we created sort of several videos ago, I think, was this target actor. So we have this item right here, which is this actor that is the target. I mean, right now it's never set. If I play the game, it's Hunter. It's constantly set to nothing. There's nothing here. So, you can see him sitting there waiting forever. There's no target actor sitting here. I can go to any of these guys, and that's what they're doing. So that's not fun. So that's the first thing that we want to change. Now, we have a whole complicated thing, right? So we're going to have to do this whole thing, like, what does it mean to have a target? So this may get really complicated moving forward, but for now, we want to do this simple thing. I think it's really good to get like this is our overarching kind of top level. Let's just get some version of that kind of going, and then we can drill down on each of the things. It's a lot easier to think about things in pieces. So if you think about like this guy as one single piece, and then this guy is another piece, and this guy is another piece, and another piece, and so on, right? These are all different pieces. And having all these things as different pieces lets us really drill down into them. But we start by having a very kind of basic, rough high level. So that having been said, I'm literally just going to set the target. So this is the success case. And so I'm going to say set Blackboard, whatever. Set Blackboard as object. That's what we want because it's an actor. I already have the target actor key here, so I'm going to grab that, pull this over here. I'm going to remember how to get keys and everything. This value is going to be pretty straightforward because it's just the thing that we hit that we successfully are doing this thing with. So hit actor, create a little reroute here. Pull this guy over here and up here. Now this will set the value correctly. But we also have to do the opposite. Or else, as soon as somebody sees you, they will forever have you as a target. And that's not correct, right? We want the target to go away when I can no longer see you, because I'm going to trigger off of those things. So that's it. This is all we're changing. All I did was drag the key over here, and I'm leaving the value as select asset. That basically sets it to nothing. So that's it. We'll compile this guy. That should all work. Everything's good here. So now in this Hunter, when this find target happens, it should set this thing. And we can test that very briefly. Let's hit play. So there's the guy. I'm going to eject. Here's my Hunter tree, which I'm going to kind of drag over here. Pull this guy kind of down here, and I'm going to kind of pull this guy over here. Whoops. Like this. And now what we want to do is take... So I can see, it's hard to see here, but I can see the target actor here. If I click on this guy, I think I'm detached. If I'm detached and I click on this guy, it should change to the appropriate dude. And if I go here, it changed to C14. That seems right. So now I should be able to repossess my guy and kind of run over here. And you should, if you can see it, be able to see... So self actor has changed. Target actor is not changing. That's interesting. Let's figure out if something weird is happening here. So debug object, what am I, 14 I said? It is setting target actor key as Blackboard object. My guess is that this value is probably wrong. Target actor is none. Yep. So that's the problem, is I didn't actually tune target actor key, I don't think. The way to do that is to make this guy public, essentially. So, the default value is going to be none. It doesn't know what key is. I could set this key to something if I want to. But it's basically like, which variable do we change? So let's go in here, and then in here I get this new value. We're going to set it to target actor. So that's it. That's what we're going to do here. So all I did was make this guy public so that I can tune this target actor key. And then I went here and I said, okay, we're going to tune this to this value, to this target actor value. So that's like the simple way of doing this, because there's no easy way here to do this. It's tied to a particular blackboard. So anyway, now this should work on the appropriate target. We're going to do the exact same test. These are little things. This is why I like to do this kind of stuff where here, we'll eject here, click on this guy, go back to Hunter. So right now it's set to none, repossess, and run back over here. So he should see me now. I'm detected. If I go back out here to Hunter, look, it's been set. So it's now set to the correct thing. Self actor is also set. I'm not overriding that accidentally. This thing is set to the correct thing. Always, whenever you're making changes like this, always test your changes. That could have been a bug that would have taken me a little while to figure out. In this case, I knew that I changed the one thing, so I was pretty sure what actually changed. So that's it for that guy. So now we're correctly showing that off. We have the target set. So now what I can do, I have my selector here. If I go back to my, is it this guy? No, that was our old diagram. It's this guy. The first thing we want to do is we want to, if we have a target, do something versus no target. So we're going to kind of create this guy. So let's do that. So this is the selector that we're using. And so we're going to basically say, create a selector here, create a selector here. So this left selector is the attack one. The reason it's the attack one is because that's the first one we want to try. Right, that's if this thing succeeds, then we're done. We don't want to keep going. Remember, that's how selectors work. If this thing fails, then we want to try this guy. So basically we're saying if we have a target and we want to add that as well. So that's a decorator, and we don't have to write anything. We can just do what's called a blackboard-based condition. A blackboard-based condition says if this blackboard is set, then it returns true. Otherwise, it returns false. So if target actor is set, or, not set, we could do whatever we want here. I just changed this guy to target actor. And then let's change this guy as well, because this is really has target. This makes it not a lot easier. Okay, so now what I want to do is try and spend a little time getting the basic logic working. So the basic logic is that we, this find target. If I have a target, then I do some stuff. Otherwise, I do some other stuff. So it seems like we might have something good here. But let's just, simulate like what a tree might look like. It doesn't matter if I have the extra selector. But let's just do this. So what I've done is I've created this wait here for 15 seconds, and I've created this wait here for 5 seconds. It's just a wait. And we could run through all of this stuff. I've kind of been through this stuff before, so I'm just going to do this quickly. Let's just see what happens when we try and grab this target. So in this case, let's say that has target is true. So if has target is true, then we'll be good, and this will run, right? This is what we want. Now, let's take a different case. So we'll make this go away. And in this case, we'll say has target fails. So what'll happen is we'll try and come down here. This will fail, so we'll come back up here. And remember, it's a selector. This guy here is a selector, right? So selector means that if this guy fails, it's going to keep trying until something succeeds. So that's going to come down here. And then this, these guys are going to succeed, and it's going to automatically kind of succeed because there's no conditionals here. So wait succeeds. So I'm going to sit here for 15 seconds, right? Let's say that I have an enemy right here. And let's say that I have this like wall and that the player is right here. So this is fine. The enemy's going to sit there and wait. Now let's say that the player goes over here. The enemy should see the player, but they won't. What's going to happen is the enemy is just going to sit there for anywhere between 0 and 15 seconds because I'm locked here in this state, right? I can't break out of this. So what I'm getting at here is that we need to, if we recall from, God, one of the really early videos, 2 or 3, we need this observer aborts, this guy right here. So this is super important to be able to solve these types of issues. When the result changes, we have a number of things that we can do. We can do nothing, we can abort just ourselves, we can abort lower priority things, or we can abort both. So as a very brief review of what that would mean, I can even set this, you can watch it highlight. If I change this to self, you'll note that these things kind of turn green. These guys kind of turn green. So what that means is if something below me tries to abort, or is some way, I should say, some way affected by this has target, then it will bail. So in other words, if I set this up and I'm sitting here waiting, and 2 seconds after waiting, I no longer have a target, what will happen is I will immediately stop doing this. It will bail on this thing and it will reevaluate my tree. So that's what we want. That's one of the things we want. Now, if I'm down here in this 15 seconds, it will not, because it's just going to abort itself. So, you see the things that are highlighted green, those are the things that are affected. If I say lower priority, notice that it highlighted these guys on the right blue. So now in this case, this will work. So this 15 seconds, if I'm 2 seconds in and all of a sudden I have a target now, it'll say, oh, this is now true, reevaluate the tree, and we'll come down here. However, if I'm in here for 2 seconds, it will not abort myself. It only will be affected by, only these lower priority nodes are affected. So what we actually want is we want both. So it means if has target changes at all, we're pretty much going to reevaluate this tree. That's what we're saying. And that's exactly what we want. So, that's a bug that's kind of waiting to happen. So that's the basic layout and the basic logic for this has target and how this is going to work for the early case. So I think that's a good place to end for now. Next time I'm going to talk about filling some of this stuff out more. So we have a basic logic for has target and not has target, and this should all work out. Now what we need to do is we need to start filling out some of these things, patrolling and that kind of stuff. So that's going to be the topic of the next set of videos. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time.